All right there, everyone. CNN refuses to retract a demonstrably fake story about President Trump. That's what we'll be talking about on today's video. If this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. I post twice a day on current events in light of conservative trends, and you can help support that in three ways. First, by clicking on that Patreon link below and becoming a monthly supporter. Second, by taking advantage of our current book deal where you can get my book, Classical versus Modern Education, for only 99 cents at the link below. And of course, as always, by hitting that bell and subscribe button. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege to have you as part of this channel. All right, so if you're not familiar with the background story here, it's actually very simple. On July 27, CNN reported that Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, was prepared to aid the special counsel prosecutor Robert Mueller by informing him of Donald Trump having advanced knowledge of a 2016 meeting at Trump Tower with Russian representatives who supposedly had incriminating information on Hillary Clinton. Trump has consistently denied any such foreknowledge, and so, of course, if this was true, then it would be an absolute bombshell. CNN claimed to have found out about this because it was leaked by someone who was in the know, who had inside information, an anonymous source, and presumably this source was corroborated. By the way, you know, this kind of yellow journalism, this anonymous sourcing, it's of course dominated the whole Russian collusion scandal, this supposed scandal, for over a year and a half now. Regardless, CNN reported this anonymous source, and of course they ran with it. It made up the template or the prognostications and punditry for the next several days. It's part of why they think the jig is up for Trump and that he's going down, right? He had advanced knowledge of an explicit act of collusion with Russian nationals who were giving him incriminating information on his opponent, and, you know, Cohen is singing to Mueller and everything like that. Well, it's now been admitted by the source of that leak, Lanny Davis, Michael Cohen's lawyer. He's admitted that the story he gave was false. It didn't happen. It's a bit confusing. Davis, as I understand, has both denied that he was the source and confirmed it, going back and forth. The latest now, again, as I understand it, is he's confirmed. He is saying he was not the confirming source of the story. Again, nevertheless, he admits the whole story regarding his client, Michael Cohen, is bunk. Cohen's got nothing, absolutely nothing for Mueller. Now that this revelation has come out, you would think that CNN would retract the story, right? That's, of course, what responsible journalists would do, would they not? Well, responsible journalists wouldn't have put themselves in this position in the first place. They would have confirmed the validity of the source, found at least some semblance of corroboration. Incredibly, CNN is sticking by the story. CNN has stated that they stand by their story and they are fully confident in the reporting of it, even though they do admit that Davis has now changed his story since it was first reported a month back. Davis has become very contrite. He's apologized for having misspoke, for having misled reporters. He's completely apologetic for what he did. And yet it's surprising that CNN is not demonstrating a comparable and proportionate contrition. Again, there's really no excuse for this. Presumably CNN had other sources, other corroborating sources for this bombshell story. But how could they if Davis is coming out and saying that Cohen never had such information in the first place? From where would such corroboration come? When all is said and done, one of CNN's most explosive stories of the summer is now being denied by the very source of that story. So why is CNN still sticking by it? Why is CNN saying that they stand by the story they reported when the very source of that story now denies it? We talked about this in an earlier video, but I think it bears some repeating. Anthropologists of media communications have long recognized that all news reporting involves reporting from a very particular perspective or worldview. There's simply no such thing as simply and cleanly conveying objective information about the world out there without representing that conveyance in accordance with one's own perspective of reality. In other words, journalism is often lauded as a profession dedicated to the facts. You know, the old adage, right? Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts, right? This notion that journalism is historically dedicated to reporting just the facts about a story without the interpretive intervention on the part of the journalist, it's really nothing more than a modern myth. No scholar of media communications takes that seriously. All reporting always reports from some, what we might call pre-factual perspective, some kind of worldview that both selects what constitutes as a fact and in turn interprets that fact in the process of reporting. What we have to understand here when it comes to CNN, and I would throw in virtually every major mainstream media outlet at this point. But the key here is that as far as CNN and other mainstream media outlets are concerned, the story is not, this is what you have to get, the story is not the specifics of what Trump did or did not do. They don't frankly care about that per se. They don't care about the specifics of Trump's knowledge of what he supposedly knew and what he didn't know about a meeting with a Russian representative. All of that in and of itself fundamentally is actually rather irrelevant to them. That's not the story as far as CNN is concerned. What CNN refuses to apologize for is the pre-factual story that underlies all of their reporting on Donald Trump. And that meta story, as it were, is that Donald Trump is nothing less than an existential threat to our democracy. He is an existential threat to our democracy and is therefore unfit to be president, and he must be removed from office. That is the story that functions as the meta story, the underlying story behind all of the stories that CNN and the rest of the mainstream media report on. That's why you're getting such a ridiculously tepid response from them, because they believe that story, that pre-factual meta story, is absolutely true. And all they have to do now is to try to find facts or evidence or instances that fit with and indicate that fundamental commitment. This is why they see virtually everything that Donald Trump does as suspect, as worthy of cynicism and suspicion. So to summarize, to kind of put this in a takeaway-like bullet point, the existential threat that the presidency of Donald Trump poses for our nation is the story. It underlies everything that CNN reports on. So this is how you have to watch CNN, or how you have to interpret all of the mainstream media at this point. The actual surface level stories, the actual events that are taking place, they're always interpreted in light of a meta-narrative that sees Donald Trump as perhaps the single most serious existential threat we have ever faced in the Oval Office. And when those surface level stories turn out not to be true, it's irrelevant to the meta-narrative. The meta-narrative is true no matter what, because it's true by virtue of their worldviews, their perspective, their persuasion, right? And all they're looking for at this point now are stories that can help corroborate and communicate that underlying fundamental assumption. Of course, if you have a different meta-narrative like we do here, if you have a different worldview, like a nationalist, populist, and traditionalist worldview, like us, Donald Trump is awesome. He's the greatest gift that just keeps on giving, right? We love it. But that, I think, is a good lesson on how news media works, according to media scholars. There's always going to be a worldview that undergirds the way we interpret events. And more often than not, it is that worldview, rather than the events themselves, that is the ultimate story the media is seeking to convey. Don't forget to click on that link below. Get your copy of my book, Classical versus Modern Education, for only 99 cents for a limited time. And as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Click on our Patreon link below. Become a monthly supporter of this channel and help us to continue to analyze current events in light of conservative trends so that you can personally and professionally flourish. God bless.